So I wanted to make this video here to talk about how recently my Tim Pool video that I did, the most recent upload on my channel, has been kind of dislike bombed and bombarded with some hate comments. There hasn't actually been anything too crazy in terms of like hate speech or anything like that. There's actually been a really small amount of comments that I felt the need to delete, and I just kind of wanted to go over what's kind of happened with this whole thing. Mainly what happened was just people in this comment section ended up being really annoying. And I don't really know where they came from because I looked at my analytics and there's only one or two videos where people came from another video where I got suggested, and only one or two of them are really like anybody on the right or like Tim Pool specifically. Or it's funny because there's one person that got recommended my video from a Tetris like matchup video, and that person went and watched like 57 minutes of my video. So shout out to that person if they're watching this. That was actually kind of nice. But yeah, no, it was just people being really annoying. One major thing that was happening here was there was a lot of things just ranging from people either insinuating that I was making arguments that I wasn't, or they were just things that were just completely not grounded in reality at all. One of the big things was that I was ignoring biology, or that I was saying that there was no difference at all between men and women. And a lot of the time, conservatives think that this sort of conversation is like a big own, like, oh, you're ignoring biology. There are actually differences between men and women. And there are very few people who have ever actually said that there are. If there isn't a difference between men and women biologically, why do trans people go on HRT and get surgery? Obviously, they think that there's a difference and they know that there's a difference. That's why they make those changes. Nobody's ever trying to like defy biology or ignore biology in any like sort of way. This is just complete dog shit. Another one was that people were saying that I was arguing that men and women are on the same technicality level in terms of skateboarding, which is again not what I said at all. What I said was that men and women are capable of the same things on a skateboard, which is a different sentence entirely. And the arguments about men and women and skateboarding are centered around the same arguments that are being used in sports. And skateboarding does not work the same way as a lot of the sports that people are referencing. People are usually referencing things like track and swimming and weightlifting and boxing and things of that nature. Things that skateboarding doesn't really use the same parts of your body, and you're not being judged for the same reasons in those sports as you are for skateboarding. Because people always reference that men can jump higher, run faster, and are physically stronger, but where is any of that being used in skateboarding? The fastest male athletes run about 20 miles an hour. The highest high jump records for men are 2 feet higher than the ones for women. And there's about a 100-pound differential between men and women on average for bench presses, but when is any of this being used in skateboarding? Even the women's high jump records are about 6 feet, and when is anybody required to jump 6 feet in skateboarding? And regardless of that, the highest ollie isn't even anywhere near that. The world's highest ollie is 45.5 inches, which is a little bit over 3.5 feet. It's about 3 3/4. And so I don't understand how any of this has to do with a skateboarding contest, because there's never really anything that's like 4 feet off the ground that's meant to be skated. Unless, of course, you're Tiago Lemos. But even then, he's the only one doing it, and it's not a requirement for the rest of the course to win the contest to skate that thing. It's not the same thing as needing to clear a certain bar in a competition to be able to jump at that level. You can skate a ledge and get the same amount of points as somebody skating a handrail. It just depends on what trick you're doing, you know? none of any of the sports talk has any grounding in reality when it comes to skateboarding. If you actually watch a lot of the men's and women's skate contests, you'll see that they skate a lot of the obstacles the exact same way. Watch when a man and a woman do the same exact trick on a rail. The technique is incredibly similar. They get on the handrail at about the same height. It's not really that big of a difference. The difference in technicality and skill between men and women really has a lot more to do with representation and investment. Women's skateboarding over the years has not had the same investment as men's. There was a lot of progression, there was a lot of money put into men's skateboarding throughout the 80s and the 90s, and women weren't given that same level. And it really wasn't until the road to the 2020 Olympics, so we're talking about like 2018, that these competitions really found it important to have a women's event with the men's event and be giving even anywhere near the same amount of prize money and putting the same amount of money into the promotion and things like that for these events. And it wasn't until this season of Street League that Street League advertised that the men and the women in these competitions are going to receive the same prize purse, which insinuates that they weren't getting the same prize purse for the few years beforehand. And in the 5 to 6 years since we've been doing this, women have skyrocketed in their ability. There are new tricks being done every single year in these women's competitions. And it's just a skill thing that you don't really see from a lot of the men. A lot of the men are kind of coming from the same well and doing just a slightly different trick that's slightly more technical. But when we're talking about the leaps and bounds that women are making, it's tricks that have literally just never been done before by a woman, not just in competition, but a lot of the time ever. And this leads kind of into another thing that I never said that was insinuated constantly in these comments, which is that I don't think that men and women right now are at the same technical skill level to the point where they could compete against each other. What I'm saying is generations down the line, that might be a possibility, just due to what I'm seeing. There's a little bit of a plateau in the progression of men's skating in competition, and women are still skyrocketing in terms of their technical ability and the new tricks being done. This means that maybe 20 years from now, this could be a possibility, or maybe not. People thought there'd be a lot more switch stance skating in competitions than there is right now. If you hear people talk about the future of skateboarding in competition 10 years ago, everybody was like, oh, everybody's going to be skating switch and all that. And that's just not really the case of what's happening right now. People are finding actually easier tricks to do that look harder to get higher points. And because of that, the women are going to catch up because they're going to learn how to do those tricks too. And then the technicality level from both of them will go up because they're pushing each other now. And that's not going to happen anytime soon. It's probably not even going to happen with the men and women who are skating in contests right now. Like I said, it's generations down the line, and it's a prediction. Predictions can be wrong sometimes. I also noticed quite a few comments talking about how good these guys are at skating, and I actually find that completely irrelevant to the conversation. And I'll even concede to the fact that Richie Jackson's "and now" part was actually one of my favorites for quite a while, because of the fact that he was a guy who was not only doing these really cool dork tricks that you weren't seeing people do a lot of the time, but he was also able to do real flip tricks and like legit street tricks in that part. And he was skating to Pentagram, which is a fantastic band. My issue with them is not their ability on a skateboard. My issue is what they're turning the conversation in skateboarding toward, for an audience that doesn't skate. What they're doing is they're making it seem like trans people are taking over skateboarding in a way that is going to affect women wanting to skate. And this is just not the case. I've said this many times. There are only 2 times in a women's competition where a trans woman has won. And both of them were pretty much open invite contests. They were not amateur contests or professional contests at all. They were contests that anyone could enter. And when you are skating at that level, everything is a lot more about exposure and getting into the contest sphere or the broad skate industry or anything like that. Those contests aren't really about placing as much. For example, the one that people constantly reference is Richie Trace, who won that first place in the Border Am contest. Second place was given to Shiloh Katori. Shiloh Katori was the highest placing girl in Tampa Am last year in the qualifiers. She also made the finals at X Games after this. Her career is fine. That's the whole entire point of this. It has nothing to do. It wasn't like she came in second place to a trans woman and then her career was over because nobody cares because she got second place. It's not really how skateboarding works. And regardless, these are the only instances that you're really going to find trans people in skateboarding contests anyway. When trans people want to skate, they typically want to film clips for video parts or for Instagram. They don't really like the competition environment because it is very rigid men's and women's events. And trans people, not all of them, they're not a monolith, but a lot of them don't really want to be in an environment like that where you have to follow these strict gender roles. They don't want to be a part of that at all. They want to be in something that's a little bit less about all of that. It doesn't matter what gender you are when you're filming a street clip or filming at a skate park for Instagram. I don't care about that. I care about how the trick looks. And this is how most people are in skateboarding anyways. There's nothing to insinuate that trans people have any sort of advantage when it comes to filming footage unless you're Marby Miller or Kean Caples. And even then, there's nothing competitive about releasing a video part at all, except for anything that has to do with the industry side of things or being marketable. But that has nothing to do with the content of the skating itself. That has a lot more to do with the politics of the industry, which, since skateboarding is so male-dominated, I don't really think being trans or being a woman has any sort of advantage for those people at all. In fact, it puts you at a massive disadvantage even if you are incredibly technically skilled. The main part of this that makes this so bad, and why I felt the need to call it out, is Tim Pool and everybody else who's a part of this Boonies thing is claiming to do this to protect women's skateboarding. But that's not what this is going to do. In fact, this is going to have the complete inverse effect. All this is going to do is going to make parents scared to let their daughters enter skateboarding competitions and learn how to skate and everything like that. So then all that's going to do is just completely undo all of the progression that skateboarding has made for women over these last few years. And it's just going to go full sausage fest, basically back to the way that it was in the 80s and the 90s. And I actually think that Tim Pool turning Taylor Silverman pro for the Boonies is a perfect example of how they don't care about women's skateboarding. I don't have a problem with Taylor Silverman skating at the level that she's at and wanting to post those clips on Instagram. In fact, if you're not a grifter, I welcome it. I welcome everybody feeling comfortable enough to post their clips on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever. I love seeing people having fun riding their skateboard at any skill level. However, treating that level of skateboarding as if it's professional, as if you're owed something for being at that level, is kind of a slap in the face to women who can flip in or out of handrails and ledges and be able to flip down gigantic sets of stairs, being able to do 540s and bowls, anything like that. And there's a lot of girls and women who can do all of those things and do not have a pro board. Look at all the people who are competing in women's street and park, and look at how many of them actually have a board that you can buy, and how many of them have a shoe. I also did find it really funny that people said that I was like rambling and yapping and complaining for an hour, when the video that I was watching was people spending 2 hours doing nothing but making a mountain out of a molehill and crying about things that aren't even happening. Another funny thing was that a lot of these comments started to come from my appearance as well and make fun of the fact that I'm bald, But the reality is that I'm not self-conscious at all about the fact that I'm bald. This is why I shave my head. I look better now than I did before I started shaving my head and I had a receding hairline and I looked like a substitute teacher. I look way better now. It doesn't like those comments don't bother me at all. The person that does get bothered by bald comments, however, is Tim Pool. Think about the fact that he wears beanies whenever he wears formal wear or whenever it's 90 degrees outside. You don't do that shit unless you're bald. This is reality. And I know this because when I did have a receding hairline and I had to dress formally, I always thought, man, I wish I could just wear a hat with this right now because I do not like the way my hair looks at all. And so he just does it. I don't know. I also found it interesting that people were suggesting that Tim Pool is not transphobic or bigoted, which is kind of hilarious to me because there's the little side note that I recorded with this face cam off stream where I talked about the Lakewood shooting. And the Lakewood shooting, what happened was because the shooter was somebody who was identified as a woman, and the fact that she'd gone by male aliases in the past for unsubstantiated reasons, but if somebody's from what the police reports and everything were saying about this woman, she was very mentally unwell. So if you're a mentally unwell person and you're trying to get a hold of a gun, you're probably going to use a different name to try to get a hold of a gun. And there are other illegal activities where you would not want your government name to be displayed on what you're doing because obviously then people would find you. But that's all that it was. But they were running with the fact that she's trans. And the police came out and said, she's a cis woman. She's the mother of the child who was shot at the church. And nobody corrected it. Nobody corrected any of it. Tim Pool did not correct it. And the purpose of that was to make people scared about trans people even further. That is the whole entire narrative. This whole entire thing was just a tactic to fearmonger about trans people even further, which is what narratives like this, as well as the narrative that trans people and their allies are grooming children, which Tim Pool also perpetuates, aims to do. If you need even more proof that Tim is perpetuating fear-mongering about trans people, how about this video here, where he is spreading the lie that children are undergoing bottom surgery all the time, completely unsubstantiated, when in reality the medical consensus from multiple sources says that while some 16 and 17-year-old trans people are getting top surgery, there are very few people under the age of 18 that have undergone bottom surgery, and none under the age of 16. But he repeats that children are getting trans surgeries all the time in this video. Another thing that was interesting about these comments was that there were a lot of people who thought that I was like offended or that they were getting one over me because I either wasn't responding to them or I would respond with memes like this comment where I was poorly referencing this meme, or this one where I was just responding with some light trolling. But the reality is I didn't respond to any of these comments because I can't think of something that I want to do less than argue with people in a YouTube comment section about something that I am objectively correct about. I was doing that shit on Facebook 10 years ago. It's not fun. Comment sections are the worst arena for debate, period. People are always trying to get one over you and say some sort of snarky comment where they're going to have the last say and they're going to completely destroy you in the marketplace of ideas or whatever. And that's what the whole thing is. Nobody's actually arguing any real sort of facts or anything that can be substantiated the way that you can with a real either face-to-face or voice-to-voice debate. It's stupid. It's pointless. It's just shit flinging. It's not fun. It's stupid. And yes, I do think that I am objectively correct about all of this. If you disagree with me on any of this, I'm sorry, but you are just wrong. There aren't very many things that I feel this way about because, generally speaking, I'm open to tons of information and everything about this. But every time somebody has information or extra points to make about this, they're incoherent, they make no sense, they're unsubstantiated, or they're from completely bunk sources. It's nothing. I'm right. This is a slight aside to this whole conversation, but it's something that is slightly related. But Tim Pool has recently decided to open up the Boonies as like a full-on skate brand where people can send in sponsor me tapes and ride for the brand and everything. And right off the bat, there was an associate for DGK who just straight up called this whole brand trash. And I think more people in the industry need to actually do that. While it will make Tim's persecution complex worse, I think people should be shamed if they take more than 10 seconds to think about whether or not they're going to skate for a brand like this. You can look at Tim Pool's entire history and all the things that he's said and why he's doing this as a brand in the first place, and it should just make sense to you that maybe skating for this brand is a bad idea. I'd honestly rather see people skating for Kariyuma or Revive. At least their teams have people who can cab backtail hubbas in contests and smith grind 20 stair handrails. You know, sort of closing on all this, the comments themselves don't really bum me out because of what they say, because I know that I'm right, and anything that's like coming for my intelligence or my appearance or anything like that doesn't faze me, because I know I'm correct about this, and I know that I'm hot. But I'm more bummed about the audience that this reached, because I would have rather that people would have found this and it would have been a group of people that actually wanted to subscribe and actually wanted to see more content like this, and maybe that it would have found some people who were on the fence about the issue and heard these arguments and heard other arguments and heard them substantiated properly. But instead, it just met a whole bunch of people who are never going to be moved over on this topic, and literally all they want to do is shit flinging. But unfortunately, when you make content that leans any sort of way politically, and especially when you're correct about things, it tends to find people who don't want to accept any thoughts than what are in their own head, and it's just a risk that you run when you make content like this. I'm definitely not, like, none of this changed my mind, and I'm not going to back down on any of my feelings or any of my thoughts when it comes to this conversation. Those are pretty set in stone because literally all of the data and reality agrees with me here. But I'm just hoping that, you know, comments like these and shit like this kind of like dies down over time, because I don't want to have to keep making content about this specifically. When it comes up, I do want to respond to it, but like I really just want to make stuff about contests and video parts and all that kind of stuff, because that's much better than having a whole bunch of people come into my comments and reading a whole bunch of people smashing their keyboards and stomping around like Tyler 1 over a video that they chose to click on. That's kind of the one thing that has always blown my mind. This was the case with the X Games and Street League videos, and this is the case with this. You know what the video's about. You see the length of the video. If you're going to be complaining about the content of the video, I don't know what you expected. You know? Like, that's kind of the crazy part of all of this. But I don't know. I think if you're walking around thinking the things that these people think, you don't really have a logical connection in your brain to be like, oh, this video is going to feature this. So I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to at least talk about this a little bit. I didn't want to like have a video with a whole bunch of just like random comments on it and not display my thoughts on it in some sort of like cohesive way. Because, like, I definitely don't co-sign a lot of the things that are being said. And again, a lot of the worst comments already got deleted, and the people who are just being the most annoying got hid from the channel. So that's the case. And I am constantly looking at the comments just to see if people are saying worse stuff. But yeah, it is what it is. It was what happened, and hopefully that video and this one, finds the right people that I want it to find. And, this doesn't really hurt my ability to make content for, like the future, and being actually able to do the videos that I really do want to do from here on out. So, yeah. But thank you for watching this video. I'm going to have more stream segments coming out throughout the week, and I'll be streaming on my Twitch this Friday upcoming, and then the next Monday. Friday will be talking about what's been happening throughout this week in skateboarding, and then Monday will be a stream catching up on all the Street League stuff, because I won't be able to watch it either of the days that happen, because unfortunately I have a job and I have to work throughout the weekend. So yeah, thank you for watching this, and I will see you next time. Bye.